Welcome to another episode of the Utalk podcast. My name is Chad Van Handel. We're excited today to have Dan Ahlborn here in the studio. Dan got his career started in 2010 in real estate after working for 10 years as a sales leader. He also was a disc jockey before that. Very excited to welcome Dan, and he's a wealth of information on real estate. So without further ado, let's welcome Dan to the studio.
Thank you, Chad. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be here, man. These things are always fun to do, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. So I think the best place to start, just where did that real estate bug come from, and how did you kind of get started in it?
You know, I think it just came from just a desire to be an entrepreneur. I'd started, as you mentioned, I was in sales for a while, and that just was kind of, I saw the ceiling there, a glass ceiling, where I didn't want to be my own boss. And it really came down to one day I had a buddy of mine come over, and he gave me this information from Carleton Sheets. So anyone who's been in real estate for any period of time, that name resonates. Matter of fact, he's still doing things today, but he is kind of the godfather of real estate investing. So I had some stuff there, dabbled with it, and he's like, oh, you can buy properties with no money down, which really intrigued me because at that time I had no money, right? So ultimately, I kind of dabbled with that, and I found by just applying myself, I was able to transact real estate. I started initially with wholesaling properties, and whenever I applied myself, I got deals. So I got to a point where I just saw my career at my former employer, I didn't want to be there anymore. And it wasn't anything against them. They're a great company. I just saw my vision of what I wanted to do didn't fit their vision, I guess is maybe a best way of putting it.
So it was about 2010. So the economy is kind of coming off of the recession, or maybe just kind of starting to recover. Did that play into getting into real estate? Were there some deals out there that also kind of intrigued you? Or? Right.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, since I've been in for a while, and the real estate market we have today is completely a 180, right? Back then deals were plenteous. I mean, you could go onto a website and find opportunities through like the HUD Home Store, you'd be able to buy foreclosures, which right now there's none of those. So how we acquired deals was different, and it was, I guess you could say easier. They were not as challenging to find. And the other thing too, Chad, there wasn't as many investors as there are today. So all those things culminated to probably some of my early success that I could have failed forward. Sure. I made a lot of mistakes along the way, and it worked out well for me.
So that first deal, I mean, when you were first introduced to Carleton Sheets and kind of that program, how long did it take you to ultimately jump into start doing some deals?
I think Carleton Sheets wet my whistle, right? He got me excited into real estate. But then I bought some courses, which I think anyone who's been in real estate investing has bought their fair share of real estate courses that taught me how to wholesale. So I would go out and stick out the old signs that they told you to do. And lo and behold, someone called, and they said, hey, I have this duplex here in Appleton. Come take a look at it. And I was scared out of my world, right? And I did an inside sales job, so answering the phone and talking to people wasn't afraid of that. But now I'm jumping into a new adventure that I knew very little about in real estate going in. So the guy takes me to his duplex, and I remember to this day, he had like an old 83 Datsun pickup truck, and we're sitting across the side from one another. There's a beat up rusty old orange thing, and he's like, so I want this price. And I'm like, I knew it was a pretty good deal. So I'm like, well, we haggled back and forth, and we agreed to a price. And then, with wholesaling, ultimately you're selling the contract. Right. So I was so intimidated to ask for anything more than I could have. So I'm like, I can only ask $1,000 more, which is, not a bad payday for what you do in wholesaling. And of course we got under contract, and then from there we found a buyer, and it worked really smooth. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. So that's where now I got, and I educate people in real estate investing. It's one of those things that once you get that first deal, it's like Pandora's box opens up, and you really have a whole different perspective on real estate investing, and gives you that momentum to keep going. So.
Sure. So did you have a buyer's list then on the other side that you could send it out to?
No, that's a great question, Chad. I didn't. It was really, I think I went to the local REIA club, the Real Estate Investors Club here in Appleton, and I think I also maybe have done some online stuff through Facebook saying I had this property, and I had like 2 or 3 people that showed up, or at least called me and had interest, and it just happened to work out. So
that's a great story, because again, wholesaling, like you said, is a way to get into it, and you start looking at properties. You don't have to have necessarily the money down, and then you can get that contract, sign that contract to somebody else.
Absolutely, yep.
So then how many did you keep kind of clicking through them at that point?
Yeah, I started with just wholesaling, and I was kind of dabbling. Like I said, I would, go off a few months because I was working a full-time job at that point, and I'm like, oh, it'd be nice to have some extra money, go do wholesale, make a nice little payday. So then it just got to that point where I think the real jumping off point for me was, when I got to that point with where I was at work, and my wife all along the way was, saying, you should do this, but, she was a stay-at-home. My kids were all young kids at that point in time, and I was the sole breadwinner. So here I have a 9-to-5, getting a paycheck every few weeks, and now I'm going from, it's solely my responsibility to provide for my family. So that's an intimidating thing, right? So then I just had a meeting with a good friend of mine, Jackie Conkle, who you know, and she's like, Dan, you already have the plan. Just do it. And it was my own fear, right? It was my fear of making that jump, and fear is a big part of anything. So I think that was really the first step where I'm like, all right, fine. So I literally wrote out my 2 weeks notice, put it on my desk that next day, gave it to my boss, who I'm still great friends with today, and said, here's what I'm going to do. And he was like super happy and proud for what I was going to do, supported me on it, understood it, and that was the most liberating thing ever. I remember when I wrote that and put it on my desk, and I had that meeting with him, handed it to him. Obviously, once I gave it to him, like, all right, there's no turning back now. This is official, right?
Just kidding. Yeah.
April Fools. No. So that's where that happened. But yeah, so then it was really just wholesaling. And honestly, even making that jump, we had set ourselves up financially that we had a little nest egg. Because whenever you start a business, it's, there's all these gurus and there's a ton of great people out there, but they always promote, you can make $30,000 in 30 days. And granted, I've been doing this for a while, but there was like a lull of like 3-4 months where nothing. Sure. So having that little nest egg of savings helped me through. Plus, to be in real estate investing, you can do it for free, but really you have to have marketing, right? You got to pay money. It costs money to make money. So you had to put money into marketing and things like that. But a lot of it, I was doing it from a grassroots perspective. Sure. So yeah, I was just really wholesaling, and then I accidentally fell into a flip. So that was kind of my first real other excitement that I had at that point.
And so so just to kind of reset the time frame, so 2010-ish, you start kind of doing the wholesaling thing. Then how many years before you ultimately?
I think it was 2015 that I basically made that jump from working full time to doing this. So it was probably 3-4 years at that point in time. And then I was just wholesaling exclusively. Probably, a lot of people do this in the area, but I know I've been doing it for quite some time. Yeah. So
no, that's great. And then this flip that you fell into, when did that come about?
Yeah, it was interesting. It was some marketing that I had. The gentleman lived up in the Green Bay area and had a property in Plymouth. And I mean, at the time, I'm like, well, I know where Plymouth is. Right. And I realized that I live here in Kaukauna, and I'm like, there's no quick way to get to Plymouth. Like, there's no fast track. It's all like side roads, like the alphabet soup of highways to get to Plymouth. So this property was in a great location. I'm like, I really like it, but I had nobody in Plymouth that I knew to wholesale to, and I'm like, well, maybe this will work as a flip. So lo and behold, I took on that journey, and I found some resources locally of some good contractors, and I really lucked out because I found a guy off of, at the time, Craigslist, which was the place he went, and he was on there, and he was a real reputable guy and a straight shooter, because sometimes you can just pick some guy off the pile, and sometimes these contractors are a little sketchy. But he did me right, and we got it on the market, and we made like $40,000 on that. And it was a crazy experience, but that was also my first, in which I was doing a lot of the heavy lifting myself. I had main contractors to do like the drywall and installation, but all the finer things, some of the painting, some of the other stuff I was doing, so I was spending days, and I was sleeping over at the property.
Sure. Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah, because we had to get on market, right? So, that's what you do early on, and I don't take that back for anything, because I learned so much about construction and just generally how you flow a project. That helps me now that I have GCs and project managers who help me with that I understand the process. So early on, as much as you want to be hands-off, there is much to be said to actually getting your hands dirty on the front end and allowing yourself to know what it takes.
Yeah, I think we really got to unpack that a little bit more. So, you obviously didn't have any concerns about rolling up your sleeves and getting to work on that property, so that's good. Yeah. What about the financing end of that? How easy or hard was that process?
At that time I had great connections because I had already wholesaled some properties. So one of the challenges that some new people have is if you're a brand new guy and you need monies, one, if you don't have great credit, it's hard to maybe go to a private or a commercial lender. So a lot of times sometimes the private money route is a lot of people go to. But even then, if you have never done anything, there's a vetting period, right? Sure. So I had access to some friends who had some money that we worked with with the deal, and it worked out to be a great situation. So I had that availability to me. It was really just showing them, here's the deal. It was a really prospectus of, here's the property, here's the comps, here's the rehab we're expecting to have done, and really breaking it down in a nice format, almost like you would if you're going to a lender to say, I need this kind of money, here's the project, here's why I'm worthy of the monies. So even though it's private money, you still treat it like a business transaction. And to me, that was so important, because even though they're friends of mine, I didn't take it lightly that they're entrusting me to put their money to work. Right. And that's what I was doing.
Right, yeah, and it's important, even if you're working with friends, probably to have, like you said, everything buttoned up and make sure you treat it as a business transaction.
Absolutely, yes. Yep.
I mean, obviously Plymouth, not knowing the area, probably, that one of those things that you know was not in your backyard.
Well, I'll say this though, real quickly on that. Plymouth was a phenomenal market. When I got there, I was kind of like, I don't know, but I ended up loving Plymouth. It is a very cool little sleepy town community where the people are amazing there, and the home values were actually superseding what I was seeing in the Valley.
Sure.
Like, I couldn't have put that home at that time in the Valley and made the money I made in Plymouth. Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting little dichotomy in that area where it's kind of not real metro, but there's enough there. I mean, they have a Walmart and a few other things that make it a place to live in a small community. So nonetheless, I really enjoy the time there.
And so you're going through your checklist and you roof and foundation, and you build out kind of this budget. How close did you stick to the budget?
Well, we didn't, specifically early on. And even today, we budget things and we always know there's going to be a fluff factor. Mm-hmm. With this property specifically, the kitchen was a little galley. And my intent was, we're just going to paint the cabinet. We're going to take the cabinets down and reuse them or do something was my thought. I'm like, we'll save some money. Well, in the process of taking the cabinets down, they literally fell apart. Mm-hmm. So at that point, we're like, well, what if we opened up a wall? Which that always sounds exciting. They do it on the home remodeling shows, right? That was such a crazy time because then it's like, well, now you need a structural engineer, and then the inspector wouldn't pass it unless it met these requirements, and it was a long span. So then we made this really, because it was a split level house, which was really compartmentalized to be this huge monster space, open concept. It was beautiful. To this day, it's one of my more favorite projects we've done, because maybe my own blood, sweat, and tears, along with my daughter and my kids were there helping too. But yeah, we were probably over, I'd say, about $8,000 in budget on that first job, but the reality is we ended up making, I think, an additional $15,000 because we knew by opening up the kitchen we were going to get it back. Yep. So we consulted with a realtor and said, hey, what if we did this? And he's like, well, wow, you're a game changer now. Right. So that was a good move.
This was what, 2015, 2000?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the market, so. I mean, again, the market was still quasi hot at that time. So
I would say if I'm thinking back a little bit, Chad, that's probably closer to that 2010, 11 stage. I'm thinking if my dates and times are following me here. Boy, it's all blurs together, but you might be right in time frame, I guess. But the market at that time was moderate. It was nothing near to what it was today. I know that. It was kind of beginning a little bit warm. The great thing about in the Fox Valley and in the Green Bay area is even with the slowdown that we had with the real estate reset, I guess, back in 2008, things are stagnated here. Yep. There's a good job market here. People want to buy. So we never really saw huge dips in the real estate market. But now we're just seeing prices going through the roof because demand is high. I mean, everything we know of, interest rates are low, a lot of things. There's a lot of great programs for first-time home buyers. So that's exciting.
How was do you remember how many offers did you get, or were there days where you're sitting there kind of like, are we going to really get this number?
That's a great question too. I think for this one, we had someone on the gates who was very interested in it. And I was going to try to actually work it without the agent because they came to me. And then it was interesting with this story because the guy, they came through and he's like, I want to bring my contractor friend through. And he went through and basically gave us this laundry list of an additional $8,000 worth of stuff that they wanted to have done. And I'm like, dude, this is mainly cosmetic. Like, it's structurally sound, it's a safe property, but you're wanting all this stuff done. So we pretty much just walked away from that opportunity. But then when I had my agent at the time, they went right through the process. And I think within a week, we had had, I think, at asking price back then. So I don't remember the specific numbers on that one, but I mean, I know we made on it, but I don't know what the offer was. Maybe it's like $179,000, which back then was actually a lot for that
so
property.
I mean, despite being a little bit over budget on some things, and again maybe just some first time flipping, learning experience, you still end up kind of coming out in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, I think with this, the big thing, and I teach my students this too, is that you make your money when you buy it. You have to buy it smart because you can't go backwards. If you overpay for a property and the market's only going to take it so far, you can't get the money back.
Sure.
So you always have this budget of potential profit in there. So worst case scenario, you walk away with a few grand and you get a learning lesson. With this being said, we knew there was an upside on the property, so getting the extra budget, as it was a huge overage, I mean, $8K is a lot of money. It did benefit us on the sales side. So
that's great. That's a great summary. I think so. We talked about some of the wholesaling, and then your flip that you fell into. Kind of what was next? I mean, just continue to kind of do wholesales, or did you get some more flips that came in?
Yeah, I think with that point, I was kind of almost like, I'm going to be a wholesale guy. I had no other vision. I didn't want to flip at the time. I didn't want to have any rentals. I think at that point in time, I'm like, okay, well, now maybe I could try. Like, I got the flip under my belt. We did well with it, learned a lot. So after that, I kind of was starting to dabble more into the flip game. So we picked up some properties, because the great thing with what I was doing with wholesaling, Chad, is that I was marketing for properties, and the good ones I could keep, right? And then if there's other ones that would be a great rental, I could wholesale those. So it served me on many different fronts, right? I could make money wholesaling the property. I could make money rehabbing the property. My early life lesson I learned, though, was because I was early on very active in the process of fixing the home. My business had pockets of slowness because I stopped doing the marketing. I'm busy swinging the hammer, and I'm like, well, why isn't my phone ringing? Why am I not getting any leads? Well, the reality was I just didn't have the team built out at that time to have the marketing happen. It was dependent on me. So I was a bottleneck.
Yep.
So I realized that, I got to make sure that this is still happening. And so as I was doing more flips, I kind of had more of that general contractor in play, and I would, do my periodic checks on it to make sure we're on task. But I was not really, unless in a pinch, I was not doing much, if at all, any of the work later on with my flips. So kind of got me into that game. I actually, through some of my marketing, stumbled into a property which I was able to actually buy the note from. It was a lady who was being foreclosed on. She's being foreclosed on by a private person who loaned her this money. It was a really unique situation. Like, they were friends on an online gambling. I mean, it's really weird. Like, they became friends through an online gambling site, and then this one woman's like, well, I'd like to buy a house, and then she's like, well, maybe I'll help you. So they bought this property in Appleton, and then she just flaked out. And then so I talked to the person who's being foreclosed. She's like, well, you need to talk to this lady, and I had a dialogue with her. I said, well, would you be open if I just bought the note? And she's like, okay. And this was actually before she was going to foreclose on it, but she was at her wit's end. Because she was an absentee owner or something like that. So nonetheless, I bought the note, and we went through the foreclosure process, learned a ton of that, and then ended up doing some basic rehab on it, cleaning it out, and then wholesaling that property to another landlord who has that as a very nice rental today.
So I think if you've got this wholesaling experience, you get some flips in, and then again this note thing comes up, and you're probably it's not as scary. I'm sure there's still things you got to learn through it.
Yeah, I think what it came down to is I had enough people in my wheelhouse of knowledge that I could go to saying, hey, this is a scenario. How do I do this? Talk to this lawyer, or this is what you're going to have to do. It wasn't as intimidating when you have people that can help give you guidance, or at least point you in the right direction, of people they'd recommend that you use for vendors and things like that. So that gives you that additional confidence to take down that type of transaction. But then from there, I went into doing some rent-to-owns. So, getting a property under contract that ultimately they're leasing to me, and then I sublease with the intent to have that person who's renting from me buy the property. So I've had a few of those that have been quite successful, and still do some of those to this day. And then eventually I picked up some own rentals. I saw the tax benefits of having rentals. So, on top of that, and then, the last 3-4 years, I've been teaming up with Jackie, who's a friend of mine. We've been doing real estate coaching. So we have a good group of students locally who we teach how to get involved in real estate and ultimately probably not make some of the mistakes that I made and they've made early on, because a lot of it we just kind of trudged through and didn't have a mentor to help us through. And that's so important in anything in life, but specifically in real estate, because I always say there's a lot of fear, and I joked about getting the F out of real estate, but it's the F word being fear. But there's 3 Fs, it's the fear of finding the deals, fixing the deals, and funding the deals. So as a coaching program, we help someone who has no knowledge in real estate overcome those 3 fears to be successful.
Sure. So. Can we talk, so wholesaling, talk a little bit more about kind of the people you're helping. I mean, I know a lot of it is about helping people out of situations, and what types of wholesale deals have you went through over the years?
Yeah, it's interesting. In my career of real estate, I've come to love it and hate it. Mm-hmm. There's times that I'm just like, I can't do it anymore, because it'll burn you out. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of what you have to do is kind of tough work. You have to either direct mail some people or sometimes cold call some people, and you don't know if they're ready to sell at that point in time. But what really fuels my fire is I know I can help people, because a lot of times what happens is people fall into adverse situations, and sometimes it's because of no reason of their own, like a family member gets sick, or they have a job change, or they lose a job, or a variety of different things, or they inherit a property, right? And now mom had lived there for the last 50 years and never threw a thing out, and this is the only person locally, and the rest of the family members live all the way across the U.S., and they're now responsible to clean it out, fix it, repair it, and sell it.
Right.
So we can come in as a really great solution to them to say, listen, I can come in, buy your property. I may buy it directly, or maybe I'll work with some other investors that we can help you in selling this property. So we come to an agreement on a price that makes sense, and usually with what I do, I structure that no matter what, we're going to buy it. There are rare occasions where we have some other things built into that, but usually they have the confidence to know that if I'm writing my name on the contract, we're going to transact on it. So it gives them the peace of mind, and I think a lot of times what really benefits is I listen to their situation, Chad, and that's so important. A lot of times people are not raising their hand to say, look at me, I'm in this tough situation. No one wants to admit to that, but a lot of times they don't know the solutions, that there are solutions out there, right? So if we can come and help and work with them or work with their lender to say, hey, can we help with this homeowner in this situation? And we've had a lot of times great times with that, where we've been able to kind of work with like a lender or something like that and saying, hey, we want to help out. And specifically a lot of the local lenders like, great, what can we do to work with you? Because at the end of the day, the lender doesn't want to have to foreclose if that's the case either. So I think it's just really knowing that we can help those individuals listen to their story and craft a solution that works for them. And sometimes we get creative because it just suits the need.
Right, because the alternative is they go with a realtor, and then maybe they have to fix the roof, or maybe they have to, fix some other things to get it to a point where, a home buyer would want to, inhabit the property. So
yeah. Absolutely, and and that's a lot of it. Or sometimes they just don't want to deal with the hassle of the traditional sale, of having showings and then having someone come in and say, all right, well, I want all this stuff done. So there is that element of that of the pie too when you were dealing with the transaction. Sometimes the way we buy, I had someone recently that said it was easier than even buying a car with how we bought their property, because the paperwork's minimal. A lot of times we're paying straight cash, so there's not a lot of additional things and no contingencies. Right. So it's a really smooth transaction. We keep great dialogue with the seller through the whole process, so they're never confused or not knowing what's going on.
Sure. Are you finding most of these through mailers? You talked about cold calling. Are you doing, driving around and trying to find properties?
Yeah, it's tougher than ever before to find opportunities. Back in the day, you could go on MLS. As an investor, there's not a lot of them out there just because of the hype of the market. So really with what we're doing right now is a lot of layered marketing. So, we are doing direct mailing, we're doing phone calling, we're texting, we're reaching out to people through a variety of different avenues, and doing that through multiple contacts. With any type of marketing, you have to do it multiple times to be successful. So that has its good and bads. Sometimes people get a little upset that they don't want to be bothered or they're not ready to sell. But at the end of the day, you have to come from a heart of service, and that's really what we do. We know that we can't help everyone, but I could tell you the number of times I've sat across a closing table from someone, Chad, and they're like just in tears that this situation's over, and it's really closing the chapter in life, and they're like, this burden, this property that's been on my shoulders for the last umpteen years is now done with, and now I can pick up the pieces and move on.
Sure.
So that to me, when I have those transactions, all the other white noise sometimes, and sometimes the people that just don't understand who we are and what we do, and they just want to, go on a 10-minute tirade of colorful words explaining how bad of a person I am. They just don't understand, and that's not our heart, right? So, nonetheless, yeah, so we do a lot of that type of marketing, and I think there's no real one channel. Because everyone always asks me, well, what's the golden ticket? What's the one thing I can do? All I can say is don't do one thing. Do 3 to 4 different things and do it well.
Yep.
And I think if you do that consistently, which is the key in any type of marketing, you have to do it repetitively for some time, because what you're doing today, you might not see fruit from 3 to 6 months from now.
Mm-hmm. And being able to leverage your sales background and things like that. I mean, that's certainly another thing as well, where somebody who's out there saying, oh, I don't know that I can get into real estate because I don't want to swing my hammer. I don't have that expertise. There's other things that you do ways that you can find, a career in real estate based on kind of what your experience is.
Yeah. And I would say this too, that because we do some coaching. I mean, there's people that we've brought in that have zero expertise in anything, construction, real estate, whatever. So the real piece of that is that you have to be willing to learn, and you have to apply yourself to do things differently. So if you're willing to step outside of the normal, grind of things and really apply yourself, you can be successful. So,
can we let's pivot a little bit and talk about just the legal side? I mean, how scary was that to you, and how have you built your team of kind of legal partners to be able to kind of deal with some of the stuff that comes up?
Yeah, I've been very fortunate. I mean, I've not had opportunity. I mean, there's a few things where I had some legal things we had to go through, and I think at that point in time, one, having good insurance, making sure you're insured properly, that if something was to happen, that you're protected. You can set yourself up and structure your business accordingly through LLCs and other things, or S corps, to make sure that you're structured in a business perspective that protects you. But I think it's just really having good counsel, and whenever you're going into something, making sure your contracts are valid if you're not using a state contract. Like when I had to do my note and mortgage, I mean, I had that all drafted by an attorney, because I just wasn't going to, I could go on the internet and find something, but at the end of the day, you have to make sure that it protects you, right? So that's really where it comes down to, in finding a good real estate attorney that can understand your business, because it's not the traditional agent situation. So we're investors, and a lot of stuff what we do is kind of unique. We're asking to do, and that's the benefit of being an investor too, that we can craft a lot of language that, as long as both parties agree, makes sense. So that's really where it comes down to. And then if I've had situations where I've needed legal counsel, like I had something recently where I had to evict someone and I had to take them to court because they destroyed my property. So again, having legal counsel there of like, what are my rights? Should I go after a criminal, or should it be a small claims thing? So I think it's just having those people in your back pocket that when you have those situations, you can make a good judgment.
How about the accounting side or the financial side? Was that a strength of yours or your wife's, and how did you kind of build your team on that side?
Initially, no. I mean, I know enough about finance and money to be smart about it, but I mean, that's
you like money, right?
I do like money. I've realized as I've been in this business some time that,
and you need money in some regards too.
Well, right? For me, it was like I know I can do better, right? So I knew I needed to find a good partner, and I found a local accountant who's been phenomenal, and I've really tapped in the last year and a half to 2 years of like, okay, how can we maximize what I'm doing here, and what are some other opportunities in which, and that's where it really got me going into the rental play, because with what I was doing, I was bringing a lot of income, but not a lot of tax benefits with that. So Uncle Sam was getting some good chunks of money. So I was just trying to look, how can I position myself that, I'm going to pay my taxes, but at the same time, how can I defer that, and rentals are a great way of doing that. So yeah, I mean, I think it was just having them and then strategizing, yearly. I just met with them like a few weeks ago, just talking about, all right, here's some thoughts, here's what I'm doing, even some of the projects I'm doing right now. I've had dialogue with them. How can I use this as for my business, and is there tax advantages of, purchasing this or doing this type of situation? So again, having those people, day one, definitely, I mean, if you've not done a real estate transaction, you're listening to this podcast today, I mean, don't feel like you have to go get a lawyer, an accountant. That will come organically. Really the biggest thing is just go find a deal. I mean, at the heart of it, if you're brand new and you're listening to this podcast and you're like, I would love to get into real estate, but I wouldn't know how to do it, go find a deal. And if you don't want to find a deal, come to a local club, go watch a YouTube podcast or like this type of podcast, and just take the action to go find a deal. Because the reality is, if you find a deal and it is a true deal, Chad, there'll be a buyer for it. So in the market, you almost create automatically.
So what? I mean, so how do people find kind of your wholesaling? If they're looking for that deal, how do they find kind of you as just kind of the wholesale list of properties that might be out there?
Yeah, with us, we have a buyer's list. So, if you're not on our buyer's list, I'm sure we can get you the contact information. You can reach out to me directly if you like through Facebook. I'm a live person out there. But yeah, you get on our list. So once we get a property under contract, we typically market it out, and we'll do like an inspection period for a period of time. You come view it. We usually sell them as is, and then you can place a bid. And if you're the winning bid, you get the property, and then we sell you the contract, and then we close on it. The process is pretty easy, and we're doing about 1 to 2 a month. We're not doing a huge volume of that, but enough to keep us active in the wholesaling market.
What about, obviously this market is different than a traditional type of or a normal market, but is MLS still a place people can find deals, do you think?
Well, yeah, sure. To say no, I would say it would be silly of me. They're just very scarce. So I think if you, and I'm not in that space right now, but I think if you were diligent and put in the time and were actively watching MLS, you could watch for days on market. Something's on market now, let's say, oh my word, like 35 days, which seems like, that's nothing, right? But in this market, people get worried if it's not have an offer within day one, right? And not multiple offers. There may be opportunity there. And one of the things I had done, a few years ago is when I was doing some of the rent to own, I was able to pay more retail because I was bringing in a tenant buyer, and we knew that it was about an 18 to 2 year window that we were going to get some appreciation, that we could position ourselves to buy it at a near retail pricing and still make money on it. We just did one in Kimberly that closed last year. It turned out to be a really good deal for us that we ended up buying, and I think we bought it for like $125, and we ended up selling it for $159 in like 2 years.
Great.
So you can buy off MLS. It's just depending what your strategy is, and you have to be very diligent. Or maybe you have a really good agent that that can help find you those opportunities, because sometimes stuff comes in the office of a local brokerage that maybe isn't listable. Right? And they're like, what are we going to do with this? Well, if you have a good contact inside a brokerage, maybe you can work with that agent and they send you the lead, and then they're the listing agent on the backside when you sell it, right? Yeah. So there could be opportunities there. They're just I would say it's probably one of your bigger passive resistance to find off MLS. There's better ways to find opportunities.
Sure.
So.
All right, so we talked about you talked about going up, potentially going on MLS. I think the other thing to try to find that deal is maybe just talk to people I think some of the other things, whether it's a neighbor or a family member. I think some of those deals that are kind of lying under the surface, I think you can find those if you
absolutely.
Make the right
we actually have a student right now who he's just gotten some deals here in the last few weeks, and I think 2 of them came from just referrals of like, so-and-so buys properties, you need to talk to Susie. Word of mouth by far is always the best way of finding any opportunity. It's sometimes the toughest because you got to put yourself out there. So if you can consistently do that and do it well, it can pay dividends for you.
Yeah, I think it's just telling people once you're ready to make that jump into real estate, tell people that you're in real estate or you're looking to get into real estate. And I think some deals just the universe conspires to help you find them, I think.
Yep, absolutely. It's plant seeds. That's what we always say. You're planting seeds for future opportunities. So it's just being consistent enough to say that, hey, here's what I'm doing, or you go to meetups, or you go to any type of business gatherings that are happening more now with things opening up, and just saying, hey, here's who I am, here's how I can help serve people. If you know someone we can serve or help, or properties that we can buy, here's my information. So.
No, that's great. Can we talk a little bit about just your the buy and hold properties that you have currently? Just how has your experience been kind of getting into them and getting tenants?
Yeah, I think I don't know if it's maybe a thing of mine, Chad, that I stumble into this type of stuff. So my very first rental, I had some rent to owns. So I was not truly the owner of the property. I was kind of the middleman. So they were leasing to me, and I was subleasing with an exit option contract. So that's a whole nother probably podcast in its own right. But nonetheless, I was doing a few of those, getting a little cash flow per month, and I'm like, this is interesting. Well, then I came across an opportunity where a gentleman wanted to sell up in the Green Bay area, and he's like, listen, I just don't want to be here anymore. The property had some foundational issues. It was in a nice area in Green Bay. And he's like, well, I can't buy it for what you owe, but you have a nice enough property. What I'd be willing to do is take it what's called subject to. So we drafted up some paperwork, worked with a lawyer to make sure it was all done legally. So ultimately, I, in so many words, kind of took over his mortgage. I actually was the person on the deed. So I was the legal owner of the property. He still kept the financing, and I made his payments every month.
Nice.
So every month I was helping his credit, and we ended up getting a great tenant in there, and they're still there to this day. So we were a year in. And then we had a 5-year basic balloon on this, so I had to buy it in 5 years. A year in, he's like, you know what? I kind of just want to be done with it. And I'm like, okay. Well, at that point in time, when I initially made that contract back in 19, the market was just starting to warm up, right? So now it's 20, and I'm like, well, maybe we could buy this. The numbers work, right? And I could buy this as a rental. It was good cash flow. I was making like $1,250 a month on this thing. It was bringing in close to like $600 a month in cash flow.
Perfect.
So we ended up looking through a local lender and got some private financing, or some commercial financing, I should say. And we took full ownership of it and then financing it back in August of last year, and it's done well for me. We've stuck some money into it, kind of did a little, I wouldn't say bird it necessarily, but with the refinance it, because we were able to take his mortgage and refinance it because I was the legal owner of it.
Yeah.
So it praised fine, and took some money, fixed the basement issues, stuck like $12,000 into getting that remedied. But now it's a really nice home. It's a little brick rancher in Green Bay, and I really love the property. I really do. I don't get normally emotionally attached to properties, but it's one that I like a lot.
Yeah.
It does well financially. It's in a great neighborhood. It's a good looking home. It checks all the boxes for me.
Yeah.
And then the other one we just stumbled across, we got a little 4-unit. We picked up the end of last year. A unique story. Out-of-state owners, they probably shouldn't have been landlords. They were just kind of doing enough to keep it afloat. Property needed some work, but they had done some things. But they were just done with it. But it was cool. It was like an upper-lower duplex, and then on the back of the lot, there's 2 like single one-family buildings on this lot, and the lot is not conventional by any means. It's very unique. Needless to say, it'll be interesting to see how we can find comparables, because there's nothing like it in Green Bay. But it's a great money generator for me. I like it because of the uniqueness of it, and the opportunity. What I'm really wanting to do is probably take those back 2 units and turning them into like an executive rental, an Airbnb. I mean, Bellin's up in that area, or someone could use it as a Packer house or what have you, because it's near enough that it's not walkable, but drivable, or someone could take an Uber, right? So nonetheless, I'm really excited for that property, for its uniqueness and the upside of it, because we got such a great opportunity on the front side that I think the potential of what it could be is almost the sky's the limit on this one.
So are you guys self-managing these properties?
I am not.
Nope.
I've learned early on, and that probably goes back to when I was out of the gates. I was in food service, and I did everything myself, and I got burnt out on it, and I realized I need people to support me. So I have a good property management company that does manage that for me. They take care of any issues with tenants. They have a number to call, so if the toilet's running in the middle of the night, I'm not the guy they're calling. So when I figure out my properties, I always figure in property management, because there's such a value in that to me, because my quality of life is so important. Yes, I want to make good money, and yes, I want to be able to provide for my family, but I don't want to be never home to visit with them, because I see too many real estate investors that they're swinging the hammers, and they're doing the property management, and then they're doing the turnovers, and it's like, if you're buying such lean deals that you're having to do that, I don't want anything to do with that. I'd rather do less and really wait for the good opportunities, and they are out there. You just have to put yourself in the right position consistently enough to find them.
Right. No, that's great. Again, because like you said, people don't want that 2 a.m. toilet call. And so, again, if you can figure out what you're good at and focus in on that, you can be a lot more successful in the long run. To the extent that you're okay sharing, I mean, what's kind of the future vision, or do you have a future vision? Is it constantly changing?
I mean, it was kind of cool. I mean, my world's changed a lot in the last year. I mean, COVID came in and obviously affected a lot of people's business. Real estate has been one of those few things that have really stood the test of time, even through COVID. I think a lot of people, I had my best year in 2020. a lot of that came to, I had a good business friend of mine and his wife approached me of like combining forces. They knew I was good on the acquisition side. They were good on the systems and the marketing side and the disposition side. And they thought, well, what if we combined our resources? And we did that. And this was even before COVID happened. And literally 2 weeks, we decided to do this and we really got the ball rolling. The world shut down. Yeah. So we're like, do we stop and be like, maybe we don't do this, or let's try it out. So we kind of gave it a 30-day run, and we're like, wow, we really like this. And very rarely do you find a business relationship and friendships that can work out. But I think we have such a great dynamic of communication. So as you're talking about what's my vision, I think really for me, I would love to get into, we're building out this business that we can kind of allow us to not be in it anymore. Mm-hmm. We're building it as such. So we've brought on other people who are doing some of the acquisition side of things from the phone calls and stuff. So eventually I'd like to kind of step out of that completely, maybe in the next year and a half, 2 years. I would love to get into coaching and education and teaching. That is another thing that really feeds my fire. I love empowering people. I love helping them get better. And that's something that's always been exciting to me, even when I was in management, when I did sales. I was a good salesperson, and I thought, well, how do you get that excitement of landing the good sale? Matter of fact, I found more enjoyment when I helped someone else get that sale. And it was so rewarding to me, and that was kind of a light bulb moment. It's like, that's what I want to do. So to whatever aspect that I do, a coaching, teaching type of process, I would love to be involved with that, 5 years from now. And maybe that being my main thing.
That's great. That's great. How important have mentors been for you in your journey over the years?
Essential. Even though Jackie was a friend, she was a mentor, and her words that she shared with me were monumental. I mean, I can think of a few stages in life, whether it be professionally or personally, that I had some good mentors that they just had made a statement or given me some guidance that allowed me to have the confidence to do that. Yeah. You have to have a good circle of people in your life. If you don't have people in your life that are empowering you and encouraging you to do things, you need to find a new circle. I'm not the first guy to make that statement, but I can say personally, my wife has been an amazing asset to me because she's been nothing but a cheerleader. And sometimes I'm my own worst enemy because she's telling me to do something, and me being the stubborn guy that I am, no, we can't do that. But yes, dear, you are right. So I'm sure she would listen to this, and she knows that. But that, in addition, so if you are married, having a spouse who supports you, if they're not in the business, and she is to some extent, but then having other people who have done it before and using that. And it's okay to pay someone to be a coach or a mentor, because you know what they say about free advice, it's sometimes not great. Yeah. So if you can find a good coach or mentor that can help you get to that next level, you talk to anyone who's been successful. I'm sure people that have also been in the same chair I have, they would talk about the importance of having a mentor in their life. So that is critical to success.
And again, I think you'll find that people, it's not a competitive, real estate isn't a competitive world. I mean, it's competitive, but I think people are willing to share and give advice on things, tricky situations.
Yeah, I think, with what we do, I mean, with the local investment club that meets, every month, that is a great opportunity. If you haven't met, if you're in the area, in the Appleton or Green Bay area, come down to that in Appleton, because that is where a wealth of information is shared. Not only is there teaching and education during the session, but if you can stick around afterwards, that's where people are just being people, right? Exactly. And they're talking about stuff, and you'd be surprised the number of deals that are bought, sold, relationships, partnerships that are created at these type of meetings. And it doesn't mean you have to be doing 20 deals a month. You could be a brand new person that's just eager and wants to know. And the people that are in this group, Chad, and you've been there too, they're just amazing people that are willing to share and give. Yep. So those type of people you need to be involved and bring into your life.
Yep. No, that's great. What other, education, books, podcasts, is there anything specific that kind of jumps out that, people should dive into?
Yeah, I think strongly, if you are looking to get into real estate investing, I think a real critical book would be the Life and Air book. Mm-hmm. That's by Steve Cook. What it really does is, as a millionaire is one who has a lot of money, a life and air is someone who has a lot of life. And this really can get your priorities straight, because sometimes we chase after this rabbit that is elusive and we'll never get to. The American dream that's being taught in the world today is backwards. It's like work, and then eventually have fun. Well, what if you could plan your life to enjoy it today and also provide for you financially? And that's what Life Ender does. It really kind of switches your mindset. But I think, that's one book. I mean, I think you have to have some spiritual things in there too. I'm well grounded in that regard. There's a bigger purpose to why I do besides just making money, because money's dirty and it really serves nothing. And if you don't have great people to experience things with, it just becomes void. You see too many people that have all this money and go down very, very dark paths. So, I think there's a variety of different things that I listen to from that. I mean, just a lot of different podcasts. And I don't know if I have we were just talking about this off mic. I don't know if I have my go-to, right? Like I always listen to this guy. I think I just have a lot of stuff that pops in my radar because of, the algorithms. They know what I like, right? It's like, ooh, this is exciting. I'll listen to this today, So, I mean, Bigger Pockets obviously is another resource you can use to find a lot of good information in that as well. So, yeah.
No, that's good. We get a lot of different answers on this, but how important was branding to the overall scope of your success of your business?
Early on, no. I think sometimes people can get so wrapped up into having this brand and, having things in place. And yes, that is important. I mean, we're now just at a point with our business where that is important. We want to kind of push ourselves as this solution resource for people because it helps build trust with people. If people know you as a local brand, they may choose you over some guy that's just a newbie, right? Mm-hmm. But really what it comes down to, I think early on, it's just being a human being and not being afraid to talk to people. Because if you can have conversations with the average person and be compassionate and listen to their situation, there's numerous times, Chad, that I've gotten opportunities that I know there have been other people there too, but they trusted me. Yep. And they really wanted us to help them, and that's what it came down to. And it wasn't because I'm some superstar marketer and things like that. It's just because I care and I'm a human being. Right. And I said, hey, if I could do this and help you with this situation, it sounds like something we can work together on this transaction, right? Mm-hmm. Just treat them fair, and at the end of the day. And I'm also the first guy, and I know this is probably people would shiver to say this. I tell people, I'm not your best option. If they come in and they want X, Y, Z, and I can't provide that, I'll say, listen, I'm not your guy. And I think people appreciate that. They always think that you're going to push them down a path that you're just going to lowball me and give me this low offer. Well, yeah, there may be a low cash offer, but maybe there's something else I can help with, or maybe really a realtor is the best play for you. And guess what? I got great realtors that'll serve you very well. So I'm okay to do that, and I sleep easy at night. Mm-hmm. I've never gotten to a transaction that I'm like, I shouldn't have done that. If I can't go to bed and put my head on my pillow and without a few minor things of just because my mind's always spinning about things, right? But not worrisome, oh crap, I really got one over on someone. I have a conscience. I'm a human being. Yeah. So I have to know that I wanted to be treated fairly, and I treated them fairly. And that has served me in the years I've been doing this.
Oh, that's great. Well, I had high expectations for this interview. I think you've surpassed them. I think, again, it was super impactful. So, again, I appreciate you taking the time. But where can people find you? And
I mean, obviously, you can find me. Our company's Wisco Property Solutions. You can find that on Facebook. I'm on Facebook as well, Dan Ahlborn. I'm also involved with the AppletonREIA.com, so that we do our own little podcast. Matter of fact, we're going to be recording one a little bit later today. So I'm in podcast mode today. But, I mean, I'm on social medias. You can catch me on, I think I'm also on Instagram, YouTube, a variety of different areas there. But, reach out to me if you're not on our buyers list or if you just want to talk. I'd be more than happy to help out.
No, this is great. Again, I think people are going to get a lot of good stuff from this. So until next time, please subscribe if you're listening on the audio, or if you're on YouTube, please subscribe as well. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Chad.